Hello again, everyone. Witch Doctor here, looking at the markets, and I'm looking at the intra-week activity, talking about the major currencies. And as you know, looking at the dollar index futures first, we got the major currencies here, all on a 4-hour time frame. And as you can see, the dollar index futures on the far left, and the way I look at it here is you got the yen, Swiss franc, and the Canadian across the top, euro, pound, the Australian dollar across the bottom. As you know, we look at the dollar index first to determine what we can expect in the major currencies. And this week was kind of interesting because, as you can see, what I do is I look at last week's trading range and compare it to this week's trading range. And here I am marking off last week's high and low, and the market really didn't do much. Same thing as last week. Pretty much just in a well, I was talking about the midweek video here. Remember, we were talking about the midweek video where the market was in a consolidation type of pattern here, and the market really didn't do anything that I was thinking in terms of like breaking down or breaking out. It really just kind of went sideways into the back end of the week. So the interesting thing here is that it really just turned out to be a flop for a week. You got the inside week type of format, and in the dollar index's case, we just basically traded inside of last week's trading range. And so when you look around the majors here, you got the euro, which basically traded inside of last week's trading range. Remember that we did use last week's high as resistance and literally traded to the downside ever since, and there was some major levels here that we were looking at on a using the Fibonacci's and determining using Fibonacci clusters or whatnot. The market has not really been able to trade above 131, so we do continue to trade off moving lower in the euro, and it looks like we're going to continue to move lower as long as we can stay below last week's high. So the longer that we do stay below last week's high, the higher the probability is that we're just going to continue to move lower. The pound dollar, which was interesting, it did try to break out of last week's high, but was not able to maintain that kind of strength. So that kind of failure here shows me that the euro may be dragging it lower. And of course, considering that the dollar index was not able to break below last week's low, that gave me another bit of evidence that the pound is not ready to move higher. In addition, when you look at the premium video that we talk about, the pound dollar was running into some major resistance up at I think it was 162 and change. It did move up to 163, but was not able to sustain the move. And as you can see, it did try to get above last week's high, but did fail. We did close below last week's high. So the inclination here is that because we did not stay above last week's high, we could continue to move lower into next week. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the premium video. But when you look at the Australian dollar looks like it's really the leader here. You can see last week's high did hold, and in fact, ever since we made in last week's high, we were not able to sustain that move. And this week was just the Australian dollar got clobbered. We moved up to that. We did retrace back up to that 105 level, found the sellers, and finished off at 104.56. The question is whether or not we're going to continue to move lower. Now remember, when we were talking about the premium video, we were looking at that major resistance level up at 106, and sure enough, it came into play, and it's holding the Australian dollar back. So in a sense, the euro, the pound, the Australian dollar are moving higher, considering that the euro, pound, the Australian dollar are moving lower, considering that we're running into major levels of resistance, and the dollar index is supporting that fact. And when you go take a look at the dollar positive currencies, you can see that the yen here tried to move above last week's high, but did fail. We're back below 78.40 on the close, and now the question is whether or not we're going to move back down to 77.20. You got to look at the major time frames here, talking about the weekly chart, to see if we're going to stay above this key level at 77.12. But I've been talking about the fact that we're probably going to go back lower. The yen has been a misfit, so I can't really confirm what it's doing based on what the dollar is doing. There's just no lack of there's no confirmation. So what I'm doing is trading the yen based on what it's telling me individually. You have too many fundamental factors that are affecting it, and therefore it's acting kind of like it's in its own world. Swiss franc, of course, as we know, it mimics the dollar tick for tick. And as you can see that we did try to break below last week's low. We did use last week's low as support and ultimately moved off of that level, finishing at 93.26. But most importantly, again, the Swiss franc here is making an inside week, and therefore I'm looking for next week to be a little bit more determining whether or not this market wants to continue to move lower down into the lower 90s, maybe even to the high 89s. But if we do continue to hold the low 90s, then there's always a possibility that we're going to go back up and test the big figure there in the Swiss franc. Of course, the Canadian dollar has been a little bit erratic, and that's just the nature of the Canadian. That's why we call it the loonie. You can see that it did try to break out above the last week's high, did fail, and ultimately came back and tried to test the previous week's close. But as you can see here, there were some buyers, but ultimately it was constrained inside of last week's trading range. Now the question here going into next week is whether or not we're going to find some support in the dollar index futures. We'll be monitoring it very closely, and as you know, the market has been moving lower in the dollar index futures, and it seems like at some point right now we should be running into a little bit of support, considering that the euro dollar has found some major resistance going back to some Fibonacci cluster levels that we've been talking about in the members trading room. So, or should I say the premium videos for that matter as well. So we'll continue to monitor this and see if the dollar wants to continue to base out here and then move higher as the euro continues to move lower. So that's all I got for this market wrap, folks. This is Wish Doctor signing off. Hope it helps. Good luck in your trading. Stay safe out there. Best regards to all. We'll see you at the next market wrap. While I got you here, I wanted to take a quick moment to say that if you really liked what you're looking at here in the free Forex market wrap video, I wanted to give you the opportunity to come take a look at the premium weekly Forex market wrap video that I do every week. And basically it's a little bit more in depth, or should I say a lot more in depth information about the markets that I cover. And you can see here that in this short video I go over the basics about what I've been looking at on the major currencies. In the more in-depth market wrap video, I take a look at a in-depth analysis on the 6 major currency pairs. You also get actionable trading scenarios. The important thing here is that we're offering a 3-day risk-free trial, so you don't have to pay a cent. It's about a 30 to 45 minute video that'll go through all the major currency pairs that I look at, and it shows you a lot more in-depth analysis and forecast, looking at the longer term picture and the big major trends that are affecting what you're looking at on the lower time frames that you're looking at on a day-to-day basis. So take a moment to go take a look at the premium market wrap video. You can see the link here provided, www.traderstouch.com/3day, and it also includes a free membership to the Traders Learning Network, where you can meet other traders that are like-minded individuals, and they're basically there to help everybody looking at the same markets as you. So good luck, hope it helps, and look forward to seeing you on the inside.